Hi friends, welcome back to my studio. Today we're doing something a little different. I'm going to kind of be recapping what I brought on my vacation with me and what I actually used and any advice that I have about kind of as a craft person who loves the idea of having all of my things on vacation, some ideas for how to streamline and how to be honest with yourself about what you may or may not use. So I recently got back from a vacation. I went on a cruise to Alaska, and it's worth noting that I did know from the outset I wasn't going to do any work, any of my day job, absolutely not, but also not any of my business, no social media, no YouTube, none of that. As you can tell by the fact that I did not post anything for a while. So I think the first step is being honest with yourself about that. And there are times I have been less honest about that. When I go to visit my in-laws or go to visit my parents, I'm a lot more tempted to bring that kind of stuff in the hopes that I might get something done. And on this trip, I didn't have any such pretenses, so that knocked a bunch of things off of what I might have packed. I am a notorious craft overpacker. I have this feeling of I don't know what I'm gonna want, and I don't know what I'll be in the mood for, and it's best to bring these things just in case. I'm not that way about my clothes or other stuff, but for crafts, I totally am. So here is what I ended up bringing, and let me talk to you a little bit about how it worked for me. So in terms of planning, journals, etc., and the associated fountain pens, I kept it pretty minimalist. So in terms of planning, I actually I have to put these in my planner still, only brought the pages that I would be working on. So I had prepped these ahead of time. I just printed these off. I had printed them ahead of time. I knew I was going to be doing a more memory keeping type of spread. And because I have a disc-bound planner, I just brought the pages I was going to be using. I didn't bring the whole thing. And this A5 journal that I'll talk about in a second, I used B6 wide pages, which are smaller, and I was able to actually just put them in the folder in the back, although to be honest with you, often what I did was just closed them in the back, and there was this, and that was fine. So because I had prepped these pages ahead of time, I knew what color ink I wanted to use, and I only brought that one. So I brought this Platinum Prefounte pen with the ink that I wanted, with enough ink for the week. And this is a pretty inexpensive pen, so I knew I wasn't going to worry about losing it or anything. It writes great. I have kind of maligned this pen in the past in my fountain pen collection video, but I have become way more attached to it since then. I really, really like it. If anyone is curious about this ink color, this is the Colorverse Gravity Wave, which I had never used before, but it has great shading. It's really beautiful. So because I already knew that I wanted it to match this layout, I already knew what this layout was, I had prepped it ahead of time, I was able to just bring the one pen, and then just to spice it up, I brought two Zig Clean Color Dot markers. These are from the Smoky line. This is Wisteria, and this is Pale Rose, and I just used that instead of stickers to kind of denote different things. And that's really all I needed for my memory keeping planner pages. So that was really simple. And then I brought this journal. This is, here, let me show you. This is the Odessey Notebooks Tomoe River paper dot grid. I bought this in a trip to Chicago a couple months ago. This is a journal I use specifically for memories, like long-term memories that I'm going to look back on. So this is not a journal where I like talk about my like daily thoughts or feelings or you know, processing or brain dump or whatever. I have other journals for those. These are specifically for memories I know I'm going to want to look back on. I try and kind of in my mind think differently about journals I'm never going to look again that are really for the now, and journals that are for later. And so this is kind of my for later journal. And I just wrote every day in it about what we were doing because it was a vacation and something I knew we were going to want to look back on. I just wrote in it in the same pen that I'd brought. I knew I liked the color. I knew I liked the pen. That gave me the ability to keep it streamlined. Now, the other thing I brought, and I don't know that it was warranted, was I did bring my 5-year journal. I have a video that I can post about how I set this up as a 5-year journal. This is from Planners Anonymous. And I just write a couple sentences each day. It's not pre-printed. I do them all myself. Every day, just a couple sentences. I had prevented myself from needing this pen by pre-labeling the date and the year before I left. And actually, since I've been back too, I just did it all. So that I didn't have to bring this pen with me. I could streamline that because I use a pen for the whole month in my 5-year journal. I didn't use this one. Although I could have. The pen I use for this journal is my Pilot Kakuno, and it was already inked with the color, and so these are the only 2 fountain pens I brought. They're both very inexpensive. They're both really reliable, and served me really, really well. But if I were low on space, I didn't need to bring this, you know, because I was writing much longer versions of it in this journal here. It would have been easy to rewrite just a shorter couple sentences based off of this journal into my 5-year journal later. But it would have been kind of a project, and I would have had to like go back and do it since I was gone for 10 days. But so I don't regret bringing it with me because it didn't add extensively to my packing list. But if I had been in a more space tight situation, I could have easily dropped those. But these are the 3 things that I kind of brought for that category. This covered my journaling and my planning, which was still kind of memory keeping, to be honest with you. Now, the other big category of craft I brought was painting. So I've mentioned before that I got really into watercolor, and I had this dream of watercoloring while I was on the trip, and I spent like the whole month before my trip like getting better, buying supplies. I had this dream, and I wanted to practice as much as I could have beforehand to give myself the best chance of actually acting on this dream. I was a little afraid that I would bring this stuff and then I would never do it, and that like it was just a fantasy. Mixed results on that, but I'll walk you through what I brought and what I used and what I didn't. So this is just a little journal sketchbook, and I'll be honest with you, I didn't use it at all. Could have stayed here, and in the meantime it got wet, so didn't need that. It turns out I was either like full-scale painting or I wasn't doing anything. I didn't personally need the middle ground. I had this idea that I would be doing like it on location, and that never really ended up happening. We didn't have enough time in any of the places that we stopped in Alaska for me to really set up shop, and some of the time it was raining and whatever. So a lot of the painting that I did I did on the boat, and so I didn't quite need like kind of, I still needed to be like on the go because I was carrying it around in a backpack with me around the cruise. But I didn't need like anywhere to do like quick sketches because I was never really doing that. This is the sketchbook I brought. I spent a lot of time researching sketchbooks, but I really didn't know what I wanted. And so I ended up making something for myself because it was cheaper and more flexible than committing to something. So I didn't know what size I wanted. I ended up doing, this is 9 by 6. No, that's not true. It's roughly A5, but only very roughly. This is a little less than 7.5 by a little less than 5.5. These are pages that I had bought. These are 15 by 11 sheets that I had bought from Cheap Joe's. I'll put a link. These are the Kilimanjaro ones, which I have been enjoying playing with. But I didn't know like if I wanted to fold them. I've looked into bookbinding. What I ended up doing were single sheets that I glued with PVA glue along here and then put just like a craft paper cover on. And I ended up deciding on this format because the glue is actually pretty easy to take apart. So I didn't know how many pages I was going to use. I kind of wanted to keep it as like an Alaska journal, but I didn't want to have way more pages than I needed in the end. And I thought maybe I'd end up scrapbooking the pages. I just wanted as much flexibility as possible. So I just did what's called a perfect binding, where you just clamp these together and put PVA glue here. And you can see it's not the strongest binding of all time. This did get a little wet, so that's part of it. But what's nice about this binding is it's strong enough to stay together, right? If I take a page and I like shake it, it holds together fine. It was fine in my backpack all week. But this PVA glue is kind of like when you get like a watercolor block. Like I can easily split the pages apart later if I wanted to, and I felt like that gave me the flexibility of maybe doing something else with these pieces of art later if I wanted to. I'll page through this in a minute, but I did really end up liking this size. I found that like both pages were really usable. I like to paint small, so this was a good size for me. Overall, I feel like that worked. And it's pretty light. It's not hardcover. It's not like way more pages than I needed. I think this is 28 sheets. No, I think it's 14 sheets and 28 sides, which for a week I was like, I'm not going to be using more than that. In terms of supplies, I spent a lot of time worrying about this. This is just a zippered pouch. Paper towels. We'll get back to this in a moment. This is my portable painter. This I actually used a lot. This worked really well for me. This is, I'd seen people talk about using like socks. This is just some scrap French terry from my sewing adventures, but I found this to be a really handy. It like absorbs way better than paper towels do, and so I would just have this here with me, and that worked really well. I had been planning on like wearing it on my wrist, but I never ended up doing that. That would have worked well if I was actually like on location and didn't have like a flat surface to work on, but I always did, so I just had it, you know, here next to me. All right, here are the supplies I brought. So I had bought this fountain pen. This is the Majohn T1. Oh, I haven't cleaned it since we got off the airplane, so it spurt a tiny bit, not too bad. I filled this with pigmented ink, so the watercoloring over it wouldn't move the ink. I like this pen. It holds number 6 nibs, which this is a Jinhao Fude nib. You can see it's bent, and so it makes different line widths. But the brass color of this pen is so heavy, so I don't really recommend the brass, especially if you're like buying it to travel with. But I already had it, so I didn't end up using this. I had an idea that I would be doing art kind of in this style here, where like the line art is outlined in the ink and then the watercolor over it, but I ended up doing a lot more of art like this, where everything was very soft. Now that's a lot of that is because I was in Alaska and everything was very misty, very soft, and like full of ambiance, and so I felt like this style worked more. If I was maybe more on a city trip, I think I might have used this more, but it didn't get a lot of use. So I don't know, we'll see. I brought these two water pens because I had read a lot that people like those for when they're doing minimalistic kind of travel painting. I didn't use them a lot because I was setting up shop, although I did find them useful for like wetting my paints. But I didn't use these a ton. I won't say they were a mistake, but they aren't what I ended up using. I brought a white Jelly Roll pen to do highlights. I never used this. Maybe I should have, but as I said, everything was really soft. The light was really diffuse. I didn't really need it. I did bring a pencil and an eraser. I didn't use them a ton. I didn't do a lot of pre-sketching, but I did do some, and I was glad to have them. I brought this blue indigo colored pencil to do a little shadows and shading after the watercolor. I did not use this. I brought a pipette to fill these. I did use it once or twice. If you're going to bring these, I recommend bringing that. But I didn't use those much. Now, I spent a lot of time worrying about what brushes to bring. I brought this scrubber to kind of help with mistakes. I didn't use it a lot. But there was a certain confidence in having it. This, however, was the star of the show. This is the Princeton Aqua Elite number 10 round, and it's got a little mashed in transport, but not too bad. What I like about this is it's got a pretty tight point and a fairly big belly. This is a fairly large brush as these things go. But because it gets to a pretty tight point, I was able to do a wide range of my painting just with this. I really love this brush. I had bought it shortly before I went on my trip, and it has really earned its place. I really fell in love with it. I did bring another brush just in case I needed to do something smaller. This is a size 4. This is the Miller's Pseudo Stable from Cheap Joe. I didn't use this one a ton. Maybe I'm glad to have it, but the portable painter, which we'll get back to, does have a travel brush in it, and I mostly used this one because I wasn't doing a lot of detailed work. I was doing a lot of kind of big soft washes. So this is my portable painter. Let me get the rest of it. There are a lot of videos of this online, so I'm not going to go too deep into it, but essentially it closes up like this. It's about the size of a cell phone, but a little thicker. It fits great in my pouch. And these are little water containers. So you open it and you can hook them on. And then you can open this up. And you've got 12 paints and your water cups and some mixing space. And this worked great. I'm a huge fan of this. It was small. It was really easy to use. 12 colors was a good number of colors for me. Just, this worked out really well. I'm a big fan. And then it comes with like a travel brush with 2 sides. So I hadn't used it much, and that's why I brought this number 4 sized one. But I don't know that I needed both. I didn't use it a whole lot. We'll go look at my paintings in a minute. But this worked great. And I was afraid that I wouldn't use it, and I did, and I'm really, really glad that I actually did use it on my trip. So let's look at my paintings just really quick. I am not a good watercolorist, for the record. I have a lot of art experience, but not a lot of watercolor experience. And so I spent the last month before my trip practicing so that I felt like I stood my best chance of making things I liked. So I've already shown you this one. This is of my airplane trip. This is a picture I took and then I painted it later. This I actually painted out the window of the cruise before we left Seattle. Very soft, very gray, because that's kind of how it looks there. But you can see I didn't have a lot of need for a tiny brush, just for like some little tiny details. For the most part, I was trying to catch like ambiance. So they weren't super detailed. I did do a little with the pen, but not a lot. This is just looking off the cruise. This was a sunrise. I don't actually really want to show you this one because I did a better one. Again, just soft color, trying to get the feel of the place. I don't love this one either. A lot of the time I found that it took me 2 tries to get something I liked. So this is kind of more what that one felt like. This one took a super long time and I actually had to finish it on my way, like after I got home. I'm still a little iffy about it, but this is the most detailed one I did, and I think honestly it's too detailed. And then I actually did do this one when I got home, but still using these things. So I only painted on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8 sides of the 28. I am really pleased with how this one turned out though. But so maybe a quarter of it, and but I do plan, because I mostly ended up working from pictures, I plan on continuing to work on it now that I'm home. So anyway, as a chronic craft packer, I feel like I did a decent job of not bringing a ton of things that I didn't use. A couple small things, but nothing that took up way more space than it was warranted. I cannot recommend this brush enough. If you're working in like a 5x7 kind of area, this is great. And I really like the portable painter too. And then just choosing your one favorite fountain pen color for the week and just bringing that. Those are my big takeaways. There are a few things I didn't use. But in general, all of this stuff, I didn't usually bring it all with me every day. Often in the mornings I would journal and I'd bring the journal stuff with me, and then when I went back to the room in the afternoon I'd bring the painting stuff with me. But I only brought like a small, like a mini backpack. It all fit well. It didn't get too heavy. It was easy to walk around the cruise with it. So anyway, I hope you found that interesting or helpful. Let me know in the comments, do you overpack your craft supplies when you go on vacation? Is it just me? Let me know. Anyway, if you liked this video, hit the like button. If you'd like to see more from me, hit the subscribe button, and I will talk to you soon. Bye, friends.